Hey, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome in. Oh, here comes Charlie. You want to, Charlie, say hi to everybody. I'll go get myself my shot.
Oh, hey, everybody. Still alive here, kind of. Got a little kitten for me. She says, I want some loving. Oh, that was enough.
I'm back. I am back. Let's see who has popped in. Let's see, for baby. Yes, that is Stinker. I called her Stinker when she was a kitten because she was into everything. She was just a little stinker, and she still is. Hi, Suzanne. Everyone gives a hand to our moderators. Thank you for coming, Xander and Suzanne. And let's see, Jaden's here. Requin is here. David Gray was here a little bit ago. Are you here, David? Welcome, welcome. I just been sitting here making jewelry. This is a new design. I don't know if I like it or not. It doesn't look like it's going to be too comfortable, but you never know. Maybe big enough for a guy. I don't know. So what's everyone been up to? What's everyone been up to? Charlie will be back in just a second. He's in charge of all our meds. And we forgot to take them before the live started. So that's what that was about. So early voting started this week here in Georgia. And some of the lines are like hours long. So we're going to wait till the fervor dies down. We'll probably go next week to vote. Charlie and I have very different ideas on how to vote this go round. We definitely don't want one person in and the other person's a letdown as far as our big issues go, which involve our involvement in the genocide. It just kills me that the country I belong to has a hand in the wiping out of people with my money. That's not my morals. And that so many of us seem to think it's okay to kill thousands upon thousands of people because they don't like their religion or their politics. I don't know how you all feel. Yeah, Xander, Charlie's going to go third party. But I say a vote for the third party is a vote for disaster. But the other one's not much better.
If Trump is 5 points ahead in Georgia, that won't make much difference.
There went a thing. So I was going to avoid politics here on my channel, but I guess it's really responsibly we shouldn't. We should really have discourse and be able to have discourse. Without fighting, hey? But I think one of the things that the internet and social media has done to us is it has robbed us of the ability to talk. We have forgotten how to talk to each other. Everyone has an agenda and they want to force it on everyone else. And then you get people at each other's throats. Who's the third party candidate? Jill Stein. Jill Stein. And I like what she has to say, but if she were to get into office, would Congress let her accomplish anything? I mean, I wish we were ready for a third party in this country. I mean, a serious third party. By serious, I mean one that people will actually take seriously. But I don't know. I feel pretty depressed over our situation as a country and as a people. Very disappointed in us. And that is one ugly ring. Oh. That is one ugly ring. I'd have to tear it to pieces. Well, it looked good on the web, but that's real jade. Yeah, the third party candidate, David, is Jill Stein. Green Party. She's a professor, and she's, like a lot of academics, she's kind of out of touch on the way things work. But both she and her VP VP choice are academics, so they live in a world of theory. That's ugly. What do you think? Ugly, ugly. I have been, could that work as a napkin ring? Let's see, I got a napkin right here. Let's see. What do you think? Work better as a napkin ring? Maybe. But that's real jade. Not jade, turquoise, I'm sorry. Ugly, ugly. So I've been, Green Party person has removed in Nevada. She didn't have enough signatures to be on the ballot.
Write her in.
Write her in, says Charlie. I've been practicing or experimenting with other things, and then while I was trying to space these out today, I broke it, so I am going to have to restring that. But that's a bracelet. I decided that these are Czechoslovakian crystals, but that's going to get restrung. I did this one with more Czech crystals, but it's smaller crystals, and I think that turned out better. What do y'all think for bracelet? We did our first really big crafts festival last weekend and did really well, and people seemed to like my jewelry. A lot of people came and tried it on and bought a ring, bought a bracelet. People laughed at my eyeballs. These are supposed to look like rose blossoms. And as a gift, Charlie bought me this colored wire. It's art wire. And so I made a bunch of these yesterday. I'll show you what they look like. So this is what life has turned into here, is jewelry making. Although we went out and constructed the winter greenhouse, I've got video to edit to show you doing that. But here's what I did yesterday. You see them. With the colored wire and little colored beads. Yeah, Suzanne, we did more than $1,000 before expenses, which makes us pretty happy. It's pretty good for one day's work. We've got another festival this Saturday, and then the Saturday after that, and then we have a couple weeks to catch our breath before one or two more before the end of the year. So they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of work. And it's tiring. So David got his blueberry plants from Willis Orchards. They look great. Gonna plant them tomorrow. Yeah, paid bills is very good. We the way I figure when we make money is I deduct what it costs us to go. Right off the bat, and then I've been paying a young man to come help us with the lifting since both of us are heart patients right now. So I got to deduct that, and shared profit with our Afghan refugee who makes items to sell, and that money goes to Afghanistan to feed his family. And after all that, we had about just under $1,000 left over for us. So that's pretty good, I guess. Look how much fun I have making this stuff, right? So David asked me at the last broadcast what I thought about Willis Orchard, and that's about an hour north of us, or northwest of us. That's where we got most of our fruit trees and bushes. We showed up there one Saturday, and we're told they aren't open to the public. They're just basically a mail order. But since we'd driven up to see them, they did give us a tour. Really nice people. Very friendly and accommodating. And our next couple of orders, they sent us something as a gift. They sent us a cherry tree one year that the note said, I have no idea what kind of cherry tree this is. One of our customers returned it without a tag. But here, tell us if you like it. And it gave us what? Bing cherries, Charlie?
I don't remember.
But there's a dark cherry, very sweet. Problem is, we're right on the edge where cherries will grow, the grow zone. And like this spring, it dropped all its cherries. It was covered in little cherries, and then all of a sudden it kind of went and dropped everything. So I love cherries too, Xander. I like the Rainier cherries that are golden with a little bit of blush on one side. I like those in the dark colored Bings. Anyway, so I was gonna, as you all requested, that I tell you stories from my career. The reason I went into journalism was because of my best friend, and I want to tell you about that. I did ask him to be here tonight, and he said that he would love to come talk to y'all. But he's got to cover the election, so he's in Pennsylvania covering the elections. And I said, better you than me. I hated covering elections. A lot of people get really turned on covering politics, and I'm so disgusted with politicians, and have been most of my life, that it was like pulling teeth for me. In one year, they put me in the press pool covering the presidential election when Gore and Bush were running against each other. And I had many a meal with Lieberman. Is that his name? And had Al Gore been allowed to win, and I really think he did have the votes, he just got messed out of it by people pulling the strings. but I had exclusive access to Joe Lieberman, who wanted to do a profile type story for People Magazine. I think People Magazine had agreed to let me write the story for them, since Lieberman gave me exclusive access. It was somewhat amusing because I couldn't stand them. Okay, we were given a cherry tree that wasn't supposed to produce cherries. My dad, but it's because that way we took care of it, it produces small cherries. Joe Lieberman, there you go. When Gore won and the GOP stole the election. Yeah. That, I was a Republican up until that and watched it from the inside as part of the press corps. And it was shady dealings. And, as I say, I was discussing with politicians anyway. But when I saw the level of corruption that we have in our electoral college and what goes on there, it's just, I couldn't do it. So anyway, I was raised in a Republican family, David. We were what they call Boston Blue Bloods. And if you're familiar with the Beacon Hill Boston Blue Blood, say that 3 times fast. The Boston Blue Blood crowd, they were the rare New England, Boston-based Republicans. My family literally came over on the Mayflower, and we're at Plymouth Rock, and we're part of the founding families of this country. I've got a couple of Supreme Court justices in my lineage and famous people that are mentioned in the history books. And they were conservative, and it was pretty evident to me from a young age that I didn't quite align with some of the family values. So I'm kind of a hybrid. I began smelling the coffee as a kid. I know some of you, I can almost hear you hit the floor in a dead faint over that, but yeah. So I consider myself nowadays more progressive, and Charlie's a dyed blue Democrat, which is funny because he's from North Alabama. So you can't stereotype either one of us, I guess. Obama is my distant cousin on his mother's side. That's cool. The Bush family are my cousins. Yeah. I've got some stories about Jeb Bush being my fourth cousin, and I would tease him when I was covering a story and he was there. I'd say, "Hey, cuz, can I get a quote?" Anyway, so how did I get into that mess? Well, I've been writing and publishing since 3rd grade, and I've always been somewhat of a storyteller and a writer. I was on the college newspaper, both when I first was at a community college. I actually ended up being the editor, and that was in 78, 79. Yeah, that was, I was doing really well as a student journalist. Got invited to DC for the SALT, to cover SALT too. You remember the SALT program? What was it, a SALT missile program, Charlie?
Huh?
SALT, SALT,
Strategic arms.
Ballistic missiles that we're coming out with. But we had, what?
Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty.
Yeah, the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. Anyway, they wanted me to go to DC to cover that. I got to interview Abby Hoffman, and those of you who are old enough to remember who Abby Hoffman was. Yeah, my interview went so well with him that I ended up on TV with him. But that's before I went into journalism as a profession. That was as a student journalist. Do any of you have a friend that is extremely close to you? I mean, like spiritually connected, close. Anyone in here Are you connected to anyone that way? Boy, everyone's just kind of sitting there. When I was 14, there was a knock on my front door. And I opened it up, and I was dressed in a shirt from the guy I was kind of seeing, who was a football player. I had one of his jerseys on, and it kind of went to my knees, and had that and shorts on under it. And this kid with curly, sandy blonde hair, square jaw, knocks on my door, and I open the door, and he says, "Hey, I'm Barry. I just moved in up the street, a couple houses up the street, and my parents told me to come introduce myself." And I was kind of irritated because I was in the middle of something, you know. I'm like, okay, congratulations. And he likes to say, and I'll let him tell you all about this, because he will come in if y'all want him to. You want to meet my friend? He'll come in as a guest, and he's really interesting. And he says that he couldn't stand me when he first met me. He thought I was really over the top tomboy and leaning that direction, if you know what I'm trying to say. And so we kind of started off repelling each other and ended up very close to the point where he was in my wedding. He stood up for me at my wedding, and because I didn't have any male members of my family to do it, and he was one of Charlie's groomsmen as well. So he's 2 years younger than I am, I think. He'll have to tell us when he shows up here. So when Charlie and I, just before I moved to Florida, I had been pregnant with my 5th pregnancy. And I guess it's a magic number 5. I was about 5 months. I was 5 months pregnant, and the baby died. It separated from my uterus, and I thought it was going to be a miscarriage, but it ended up being more of a stillbirth. And those of you who have been through that experience know about the huge hormone swings that you go through. But right after I miscarried, Charlie says, "You know what? Might be a good time to go for a PhD." So we picked up and moved from Opelika, Alabama to Archer, Florida. And bought 5 acres of land in a little 12 by 70 foot trailer with no air conditioning and holes in the floor. You could look down through the floor and see sand. It's okay, Suzanne. Thank you though. It is what it is, you know. Never got pregnant again, so that's one of the reasons we don't have kids. Wasn't for a lack of trying, it just wasn't meant to be. Anyhow, so I think I was I was depressed with the hormone thing that goes on, and I should probably tell you, my family and I have always had a love-hate relationship. They loved me because I had to, but we really hated each other. So my mother wasn't very sympathetic when I was in the middle of miscarriaging. She didn't want to come help me out. So Charlie, we were kind of fighting, weren't we, honey?
You and the mother?
Yeah, no, you and me. And we kind of went through a rough spot right after that move and everything. And I was suicidal. Charlie was off at school, and I was sitting in these 5 acres in the backwoods of Alachua County, Florida, literally the backwoods, in an unair-conditioned trailer. It was summertime and excruciatingly hot. I mean, one of those around Gainesville's surrounded by swamps. So the humidity is really, really high, and it's like walking around with a wet woolen blanket over your head. You can hear the bull alligators roaring. It's very prehistoric. Hey, Adrienne. And I'd had it. I tried calling my mom to tell her I was having problems, and she didn't want to hear it, hung up on me. So I was sitting in the little kitchen area with my shotgun. And I'd put the shotgun in my mouth, and I couldn't reach the trigger. So I tried the shotgun underneath my chin, still couldn't reach the trigger. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out how do I shoot myself if I can't reach the trigger. And I started to cry. Then I got angry and threw the shotgun across the room, went and got it, went back, sat in the chair, and the phone rang. And I picked up the phone, and the voice on the other end was Barry. And I hadn't spoken to Barry since the wedding, and it was maybe spoken to him twice in 7 years. I've been married about 7 years at this time. And the first words out of his mouth was, "GD it, Lisa. What the hell's going on? Are you in trouble?" He says he felt that I was in peril. He could feel it. Now, by this time, he was, I believe, and when he comes and joins us, we'll touch on this story, and you can ask him questions about it. I think he was producer director for Prairie Home Companion. Anybody in here, show of hands? You remember Prairie Home Companion out of St. Paul on NPR? It was a really funny show. National Public Radio. But anyway, he was producer director of that. And Suzanne says she listened to it sometime. So that was Barry's work that you were listening to. And he says, "Are you in trouble? What's going on? I feel like you're in trouble." So I told him about what was going on in my head and everything. And he said, "You just need to find purpose. Your problem is you don't have purpose. Everything centers around your husband. So you need to find you." So I told him I didn't know who I was anymore. For most of my life, I wanted to train horses. And I'd gone to the first college I went to had an equine program that I majored in, and I got certified in training. So I was certified to teach horseback riding and to train professionally 3-day eventing horses. But right before I had this miscarriage, I had broken my back training a horse in Alabama and couldn't ride anymore. So I was really I was in a bad spot. So Barry says, "Well, you know what? You've always been a really good storyteller. You know how to set a scene and keep people engaged. So why don't you go into journalism?" You know, by this time, Barry I think he majored in business at UNC Charlotte and had volunteered at the National Public Radio station out of Chapel Hill. And he never left NPR once he started volunteering there. And he says, "You know, you'd probably like journalism." Hey, Gwen, welcome in. So don't forget to give me a thumbs up, y'all. That helps my algorithm, right? So thank you, David. David says he's glad I couldn't figure it out. Well, I've since figured it out, David. So if I'm ever in that condition again, I know how to do it. So we won't go there, then, right? So Barry says if you, by this time I already had 2 undergraduate degrees and a master's. Okay, all but clinical and counseling psychology. And I had thought, well, maybe I can transfer my credits to the University of Florida and do my clinical, and I can be a counselor. But University of Florida wanted me to start over in their program. They wouldn't accept my hours from Auburn. So I was in a hard spot emotionally, and Barry says, well, let's get you into journalism. But the journalism school at the University of Florida, believe it or not, was one of the best in the country at the time and very hard to get into. It was right up there with Columbia. So I'm like, how am I going to get in there? I just basically, through college, didn't study until the night before my test, and that type of student, And I says, how am I going to get in? And he says, you know what? I'll write you a letter. I'll recommend you. And and he did. And they looked at this letter from Barry at National Public Radio. Prairie Home Companion was one of the most successful radio shows out there at the time. And I think in some parts of the country, they still run reruns on it. Hey, Gwendolyn Best, alter ego. So, where was I? So Ralph Lowenstein was the dean of the Communications College, which journalism falls under, and he called me in for an interview, and I thought that I wanted to do public relations. Now, in this whole mix of things, I was involved in foreign exchange, and the mayor of the town asked me if I would manage her re-election campaign, and all this was going on. And I did. I got her reelected. And so when I went in for my interview, or I was on the team that got her reelected, I actually directed her reelection campaign. Her name was Cynthia Chestnut. So I went in for my interview at the communications school, and the chairman, not the dean, but the chairman of the department was, what was his name, Charlie?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember. Anyway, the chair of the PR department, I went in and talked to him, and he goes, no, Lisa, you already know public relations. I've been following you. And he goes, you need to study journalism, he says, and work as a journalist for a few years, and work every form of journalism you can do. And each specialty, I don't know if you all knew this, but each specialty has its own set of skills. There's magazine journalism, there's newspaper journalism. Those are the 2 print types. Then there's broadcast journalism for radio, broadcast journalism for television. Each is a little different. And he said, get your general communications degree and work your way through all those venues, which I did. I even made documentaries. He said, because a well-versed journalist becomes an excellent public relations person because you know how to write a press release and to communicate with each venue. So I started to study journalism. I was a little bit older. I was approaching 30, right? And as you progress in journalism, it's not necessarily how good you are, but it's who you know. So networking becomes extremely important. So I joined the Society of Professional Journalists. They wanted me to do the Society of Hispanic Journalists because my surname before I was married is Hispanic. It's Bolivar, Bolivar. But I was raised very white bread, so I didn't feel right about claiming my Hispanic heritage, which is my father, of course. But that was my byline, Lisa Bolivar. And I only had time to do one internship to do the networking thing, because I already had my 4-year degree, so I could do the J school in 2 years, 4 semesters. Am I related to Simon? Yes, very good, David. Most Americans don't know who Simon Bolivar was. Yeah. So I've got revolutionaries on both sides of the family. Anyway, so I started applying for internships late, and there was a magazine. I wanted to cover the Middle East. I wanted to be a war correspondent. And so I started applying for internships in Washington, D.C. And any of you who are in communications or politics or anything like that know how hard it is to get an internship in Washington, D.C. And I had contacted the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs, which is a pretty well-known foreign affairs magazine run by former Foreign Service diplomats. The Ambassador Andrew Kilgore, who's originally from Alabama, was the publisher, and Richard Curtis, who had spent decades as a Voice of America bureau chief in Crete, ran the magazine. And not only did I convince them to take me on as an intern, but I told them, look, I'm not a kid right out of school on mom and dad's dime. I'm a young married woman and I need to get paid. So most Washington, D.C. Internships are not paid. I convinced them to pay me and even got a raise during my time in Washington and ended up staying a little longer. But Barry, by this time, they'd closed down the Prairie Home Companion show and transferred him to DC, where he was producer / director of Morning Edition. So those of you who listen to Morning Edition on NPR every morning, that's Barry's show. It still is. And this is since the 90s. He's been producer director there. So he says, when we thought that I was only going to be in my internship at the magazine for 3 months, he says, well, come intern at NPR. And, you know, it may sound crazy to you all, but I turned him down. I told him I couldn't take advantage of a friendship. I just didn't think it was right to take advantage. I mean, do y'all think I was crazy? Should I have interned with Barry? He was really disappointed. He worked on me all summer. Come over to NPR, come over to NPR. And I just couldn't bring myself to do that, to take advantage of a friendship like that. I was afraid that once we worked together closely, that the friendship wouldn't last. he also at some point, and don't know how Charlie feels about me telling you about this, but he also at one point asked me to marry him, and I wouldn't marry him for the same reason. He's a friend. I couldn't do that to a friend. Poor Charlie. And I still, if we both ended up single, I still don't think I could. I like him too much to do that to him. So I'd rather have you as a friend, Barry. So, it was an exciting summer. We had lunch about every other day, which was dinner for him because he has to show up at work like at 5 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m., some absurd time. So he would get off work about midday and head over, and we'd go somewhere on in Adams Morgan to eat. And he just kind of coached me on what I was doing at the magazine. They asked all the interns to write a chapter on which is called a fact book. Does anyone here know what a fact book is? The CIA puts a fact book out every year, I think. That I think I might have it on the shelf here somewhere. It gives you all the data on countries from how much money they bring in, what their exports are, what their imports are, major religions, languages spoken, percentage of people past a certain age, or a whole lot of information. And the magazine wanted their own fact book on the Islamic countries. And by this time, I'd started working on I should probably back up. When I was trying to get an internship at newspapers, I had one after another tell me that they probably wouldn't hire me once I graduated because of my age, unless I had a specialty. And so I started asking editors, well, what specialty do you look for? And the editors, one after another, editors across the country, said, religion. That's one area that we don't have reporters that do a good job. People just don't do religion well. So I applied for a graduate school in the religion department at the University of Florida. And they had a brand new chairman, Asim Nanji. See, my brain, since my heart attack, I just don't remember. His last name was Nanji, and he was the first Muslim chairman of the religion department at University of Florida. And I wanted to study Islam because I wanted to be a war correspondent. And I figured if I could specialize in Islamic studies, I wouldn't run out of anything to write about, right? Forever feed me things to write about. Boy, was I right about that, huh? So with a comparative religion degree, you choose 3 other faiths to study along with what you want to focus on so that you can compare scripture and compare belief systems. So I chose Judaism, Christianity, and Hinduism. I figured those were the 3 biggies, and the Islam. And that was an adventure. And I'm very proud to say I was top of my class and had invitations from Al Azhar University in Egypt and an internship offer at the Khaleej Times, which is the Khaleej is the Gulf Arabian. It's in the Arabian Gulf, run by the Qataris. They ended up, when they found out I was married, rescinding their offer because for some reason they didn't want a married woman. But anyway, so I ended up in DC and seeing Barry, and writing this, my chapter in the fact book. And they were so impressed with what I came up, the information I was able to gather. And I'm like, this isn't rocket science. I called the CIA. I called the World Bank. I called World Health Organization, and these are all organizations that gather data, right? And I got them to send me their data, their up-to-date data. So next thing I know, the magazine is asking me to stay longer, took the chapters away from the other interns and gave them to me. So I wrote their fact book. Learned all sorts of interesting things. So I'm just reading the chat. Not only that, you had established your own identity in the journalism world. Yeah, I was well known. Whenever I was hired onto it in a new agency, Adrian, people would come over and go, "You're Lisa Bolivar?" So my work was respected. You know, they're like, "Oh, you're Lisa Bolivar. Lisa Bolivar's here." And then they found out rather quickly that I'm pretty blunt and I speak my mind, and the honeymoon was over. But Barry stood by me my entire career, promoted me. He never stopped. He never stopped saying, "Come work with me." In fact, when we moved here to Georgia in 2014, he says, "Why don't you come to DC? It's not too late. Yeah, we can do it." We kind of batted around the idea of working at an affiliate here in Georgia. He liked my voice. My voice in radio comes across nice. And I was a news director at a news talk radio station in Gainesville for a while, Gainesville, Florida. And it was one of the rare FM stations called Sky 97.3 FM. I think they're still on the air, but I was their first news director. And they were a conservative station. They're in North Florida. So that's how I got into journalism. My friend Barry basically saved my life, quite literally, by being so connected. We're so connected spiritually that he felt that I was in trouble, and I was. He called and he gave me that advice, and he kind of held my hand through the application process and throughout my career when I had questions on how do I approach this situation. He was always there with great advice, and he still is. When I went into radio, he sent me a broadcast journalist handbook on teaching me how to write spoken script, which is very different from the printed word. And I still have that book somewhere. When I started making documentaries, I did that for a British company that whenever they would come to the United States, I would be their producer. And then I pitched a couple of story ideas, which one took us to Hebron in the West Bank, just outside Israel. And in order to go on that, I had to go through terrorist training, which teaches you what to do if you're taken as a prisoner, as a hostage, how to survive that. He gave me all sorts of advice on that. It was a couple of $1,000s that I never got to do because the owner of the documentary company decided he wasn't going to pay for it, and I didn't have the money to pay for a terrorism school. But they went ahead and did my story, and I produced it from here. They said we need someone on the outside in case we are taken hostage, someone to negotiate with the embassies and everything. So I was their standby here stateside. And then another story I pitched, I believe it's still on YouTube, I'll look for it in just a second here. There is a Chechen surgeon who is a, what do you call a plastic surgeon? And when the Russians started attacking Chechnya, he was one of the few doctors that stayed in Grozny when all the other medical people who could get out of the country got out of the country. But his name is Hassan Bayev. So Dr. Bayev stayed in Grozny and took care of the people who were being injured. He did amputations with hacksaws, and his house, the Russians put a missile into his house, but it took the house down, but not the basement. And he was doing surgeries in his basement. It's quite a story. There's a book he wrote. It's called The Oath, O-A-T-H. Let me see if it's still in print for you, because I really recommend reading it. See if it's on Amazon. Hassan Bayev. Yeah, The Oath, Surgeon Under Fire. Says it's 50. Oh my goodness, it's $50. That's crazy. I'm going to give you this one. And if you have $50 to spare, this is his book. Hassan Bayev. Can't believe how much it is. I think I paid like $14 for mine. Let's see. Trying to remember what we called the video, because it's on YouTube. I'm looking. All right. So I produced this. This was my story. I met Hassan while covering the news in South Florida. And it's Brucey the garden cat. So I was covering the news in South Florida I think I was writing for the Miami Herald at this point. But I was at a mosque, and it was during the anniversary of Srebrenica. I don't know if you all remember the Bosnian War, where the Serbs went into Srebrenica and annihilated the male population. A lot of the women too, just lined them up and shot them and pushed them into mass graves. And one of my, we call it sources, was a survivor of Srebrenica. And he called me and said, we're observing the anniversary of Srebrenica. I thought it was the 10-year anniversary at our mosque. Would you like to come write about it? And I said, sure. And he says, you've got to meet this guy, Hassan Bayev, who lives in Massachusetts now, but sneaks back into Grozny. Now, both the Russians and the Chechens wanted him dead, because he, this is what he talks about in his book, The Oath. Because he took an oath to do no harm, right? Like most people in the medical profession. And he wouldn't ask someone's politics or ethnicity. What he saw was a patient, and if you needed help, he helped you. Okay? So I listened to his lecture on how he has to sneak back into Grozny. And he would go into Grozny and stay a couple of weeks and repair as many maimed children as he could. You know, when Princess Diana was still alive, she worked on an international project on clearing landmines. I don't know how many in here remember that, but that was her thing, was supporting the efforts, international efforts to clear minefields. And Chechnya was one of the most, what's the term, Charlie, for lots of, he's asleep in his chair. Anyway, the minefield clearing. And, you know, children were like to play soccer or cut across a field to go to school, and they were blowing their legs off. So Dr. Bayev would go in and repair them. And then he got into repairing cleft lips. When a woman is under a lot of stress and she's pregnant, she can have malformed babies. And also the bombs that the Soviets dropped on Chechnya had depleted uranium, and that was causing birth defects. So Hassan would sneak back into Chechnya, repair as many children as he could, and get out before the Russians or the Chechens could catch him and kill him. And, you know, I asked him, well, how often do you go back? Thank you, Xander. Thank you, Suzanne. How much are those? It's a really good read. Heartbreaking, but it's a very good read. Anyway, so that was his thing. And I said to him, how would you feel about us doing a documentary on you, following you into Chechnya? And he said, okay. So I pitched it to my director out of the UK. The name of the company was the Interesting Film Company. And I think you can still look them up online. They used to list me as their US-based producer. I don't know if I'm still on the website, but I was at one time, Lisa Bolivar. But I've got like 6 documentaries I've made with Tim Tate. And yeah, Xander, thank you. $8 to $20. That's reasonable. Who's going to pay $50? I'm not. Anyway, so we made the documentary. Tim, again, I didn't get to go because of the terrorist training I couldn't afford. But also, it was really, really tricky getting in and out of Chechnya, because you have a layover in Moscow, and you know the Russians aren't warm and fuzzy with Western journalists. So Tim went in and with a Canadian camera woman who spoke Russian. And they went in and posed as a married couple and went into Chechnya. And at one point in the documentary, they're about to be inspected by Russian soldiers, and they turn the camera off, but they keep the sound rolling. And Hassan looks at the camera and says, put it down, they're coming. And it kind of adds an element of tension to the documentary. But Al Jazeera ended up buying the rights to the documentary, and it's in 2 parts, and it is on YouTube. And that is part 1. And I believe when you watch that, then when it's done, it comes up with a part 2. And as it begins with Hassan Bayev, Dr. Bayev, and his T-shirt, and that's me behind the camera. You can't see me, but it's me doing the camera work and the interview with him. Does it still list me on that page? Thank you, Suzanne. What kind of title are they giving me now? Tim Tate has retired. But what gets me, what gets me about this is, I came up with several of our award-winning film ideas. Most of the films I pitched that he went ahead and made won awards. I think that my film on Hassan Beyou was the most important work of my career. That's cool. Thank you, Suzanne. That's nice of them to say that. We won like 3 or 4. I did 6 documentaries. 5 of them were my idea, and we won international awards on 4 of them. There's one that was, I think, picked up by Sky News in the UK, called How Safe Is Your Plane?, where we exposed Boeing for putting faulty parts into their aircraft, and the fact that when their employees would report that faulty things were being put into the aircrafts that were going to cause the planes to crash, they were fired. So our story really kind of revolved around the whistleblowers, and what we used the whistleblowers' experience to tell about the problems. And I was the lead producer on that documentary, and it won a second place medal in the world, the New York Film Festival for investigative journalism. And so I've done some interesting work, and it was all Barry's fault for telling me I was a good storyteller and to get into it. And the professor at University of Florida who told me, no, don't major in public relations, go work in every facet of journalism as you can. And I did public relations for a couple of years, but the New York Times kept calling me and saying, when are you coming back to newspapers? And twisted my arm. They had started buying up local newspapers, building their arsenal of local news, because local news is really more important than international news. It's not as glamorous. Everyone wants to be an international reporter. And by the way, no one would hire me as a war correspondent because of my age. So journalism is incredibly sexist. It's incredibly discriminatory according to age. It's who you know and how busy have you been? What is the last thing you did? It's a very strange field because our whole job is holding politicians and people with power, holding their feet to the fire, and yet we're so cutthroat with each other. Anyway, don't get me going. So that's how and why I chose journalism, because of my best friend Barry and his support. And he said he'll come be a guest here on our Georgia Suburban Homestead after the elections, and he's had a little bit of time to recuperate. I swear, I am so glad at times like this that I'm not in journalism. It's exhausting covering election, and this election's got to be a doozy. That, and I don't like not being able to express my opinion, because it's like you can't let everyone know which way you lean, and so that's a challenge. That's a real challenge, to keep yourself out of it and to be balanced and fair. And with what's going on right now, I can't be balanced. I'm sorry. I'm leaning in a direction that most journalists don't. So at least journalism today. So that's how and why I went into it. And, looking back, it's probably the best profession for me, because you learn something new every day. No 2 days are the same. I mean, what other profession can you be interviewing or writing about a homeless person and interviewing them under a bridge with the interstate above you, like I did in Miami. And then by the end of the day, you'd be interviewing a head of state. What other profession can you do that? It's perfect for those of us with attention deficit disorder because you bounce from subject to subject. Type A personality, which I have, it's go, 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 constant deadlines. And broadcast is worse than print in deadlines. So it appealed to all aspects of my personality. I've met some really interesting people. I've met some really scary people. Been shot at and beaten up and had all sorts of things happen to me that scared the hell out of Charlie, and that's why he asked me not to do journalism anymore when we moved here. I wish I hadn't honored that request because I still itch to go out and report. So that's why. And y'all get awful quiet. What's ick? Xander, what do you mean ick? I'm waiting for Xander to tell me what he meant by ick. Hey, Eleanor, welcome in. Oh, having to deal with political stuff, yeah. And you try not to show on your face that you really dislike the politician that you're interviewing. You can't let them know. When I was in D.C., that summer in D.C., Hanan Ashwari was addressing the UN and addressing Congress on the plight of the Palestinians. Yasser Arafat had been banned from entering the country, but I met him. I did meet Mr. Arafat, and I also interviewed Ross Perot. Do y'all remember Ross Perot? And I swear to you, he and Arafat were twins separated at birth. I've never met two people that looked more alike. And Ross was a little bit shorter than I am. And the whole time I interviewed him, he stared down my cleavage and at my chest, like back and forth looking at my chest. And from that day forward, I wore a blazer. So that was so disgusting. I mean, he did everything but reach out and grab me. It was a disgusting human being. I interviewed Bibi Netanyahu early on in his career. Will Smith. He's good looking. See, who else have I interviewed? That's interesting. God, I've been really working in journalism since 1979. If you include my time as a student journalist. And after we go off air, I'll remember all these other people that I met. But some real movers and shakers. And the magazine did offer me a full-time job, but Charlie wouldn't relocate to D.C. Voice of America offered me a job and even offered Charlie a job. They wanted to send us to Crete. They were going to use him as statistician. He wouldn't go. New York Times wanted me in New York. And throughout my career, I've had to choose between my career and my marriage. And it's always, because I grew up in a home without love, I have always chosen my loving husband over my career. For whatever you think of that, I chose Charlie over my career, although I had some mighty powerful doors open for me. And I was very good at what I did. I do have regrets that I didn't stepped through some of those doors, but I would have had to have done it as a single woman. Yeah. So, yeah. So how would you all have done? There's a lot of women in here. There's a few men. What do you think about me choosing my choices in life? Should I have ditched him and gone for it and seen the world? Did I make the right choice, ending up just doing local news instead of and some national? Had I chosen my career and had the heart problems this spring, I probably wouldn't have made it. Am I happy? I'm relatively happy, yeah. Love is priceless, right? My family certainly isn't there for me. So I basically say I don't have a family. Charlie's family's not really warm and fuzzy with me, for whatever reason. But he's a gem. Would y'all excuse me? I'm going to go see if he's okay. He's just kind of slumped over in his chair.
I'm fine.
You're fine? Okay. He looked like he passed out at his desk today.
I woke up at 4, couldn't get to sleep.
He says he woke up at 4 a.m. last night and couldn't get back to sleep. So he's burning his candle at both ends now. Yeah. Gwen says no real regrets. Yeah, the regrets, I really wonder where I would have ended up had I taken that job in Crete. Do you all know who Voice of America is, VOA? That would have been really, really interesting job. And had Charlie gone ahead and taken the job that they wanted to give him, we would have seen the world over there, on the island of Crete, right off the Middle East, and could have hopped over to Europe and seen those places. Eleanor says I made the right choice, that love is important to prioritize. I watch a lot of crime shows here on YouTube while I'm sitting there making my jewelry. And right now, all the crime shows are kind of focusing on things that were done to children. And I said to Charlie today, I said, we tried so hard for so long to have children and couldn't. And these people who have kids and abuse them, where's the fairness, right? Eleanor says, if you had chosen the other way, wouldn't I be lonely? Who knows? Who knows? Would I be lonely? It's assuming I would be alone. But those are all speculation. The facts are that I chose Charlie above career. And I'm a little bitter about it because I did have those. I had the type of opportunities that very few people have, and I walked away from them. I always had in the back of my mind that he'll be ready one day and I can walk through one of these doors. The doors will keep opening. And of course, after 15, 18 years, the doors weren't cracking open for me as often. Although my last gig was with CBS News in Miami, and I was a contract producer. They hired me to edit their web copy. And that's where I met Gio Benitez. Those of you who watch ABC News, he's now with ABC. I think he's a transportation reporter. And I think he was doing a side gig for I Survived. But Gio I was one of his producers. And they kept trying at CBS, they kept trying to get me to sign a contract and go full time. And I knew that we were looking to move. And I didn't want to sign a contract and get stuck in Miami with Charlie, coming to Atlanta. There were like 3 different places. We looked at Flagstaff, Arizona, Atlanta, Georgia, and one other place somewhere in the Carolinas, for him to step out of. He was working for Raytheon and the Department of the Navy, where we wanted to go, public sector and get out of Florida. Florida's not the place you want to be if you're retiring. Yeah, I'm reading the chat. This is why I'm single. I'll make my own decisions. Adrian says, soulmates, I made the right choice. You got to live a career and have a family life. Yeah, but here I am, Gwen. I've got 2 master's degrees, top of my class, 2 undergraduate degrees. And what do I do now? I'm a cashier at Home Depot. Seems kind of anticlimactic, doesn't it? But so I've got another story I can share with you if you want to hear it or you want me to save it. And it has to do with my first year as a journalism student at the University of Florida. Anybody in the comments going to egg me on? Say, tell us. Or do you have any other questions for me? Suzanne says, sure, if you want to. It involves a shotgun. Let me look up when this takes place. Okay, let's see. All right, in 1991, early on, as I'm starting into my journalism classes, Eleanor says she has an undergraduate degree and a master's. What's your master's in, Eleanor? I work on a farm part-time and a contract assistant farmer's market manager. Well, what are your degrees in? Are your degrees in MBA in business or ag? Xander doesn't want to know any Mr. Happy in places they don't belong stories. Xander's remembering a story I told last time about it involved a pool intake valve in a tourist. Anyway, so Charles was working on his PhD in statistics. I like to tell everyone, if you study statistics at that level, you've got to have a sick mind. But Eleanor's got a master's degree in market research, undergrad in food industry management. So you're working, you're using your skills, Eleanor. That's great. But the only way I use my skills at the Home Depot is everyone I see who's from another country, I try to greet them in their own languages, and they love it. I've got people. I work in a very diverse store, lot of diversity in the clientele and in the employees. That's really, we'll have to have you on as a guest, Eleanor. You want to be a guest and talk about your background one day? What do you think? Shoot me an email, Eleanor. Type my email in here. Shoot me an email if you want to come on as a guest and we talk about aspirations and stuff. There's some people here who could probably give you some advice. So I had started studying for my you like my mustache? For my journalism degree. Really? And Charlie was working on his PhD, and you get to the point, or he was at the master's level at that time, I think, where he was working on his thesis. And this is really before people had home computers. So where's he? So he had to go into his office on campus to work on writing his thesis. And this is also before cell phones. So he had a desk phone with those little buttons that light up when you have a call coming in. Do you all remember those? So it was after dark. I was alone in this 12-foot wide mobile home with Peter Max walls and mustard yellow shag carpet and hot as Hades. You know, it was one of those Florida nights where you could hear the tree frogs and the bull gators howling for sex and mosquitoes big enough to carry you off. And of course, I had to have all the windows open because there was no air conditioning in this trailer. And I should back up. Let me back up. We had boxer puppies. We raised boxers and goats to sell, and I had my little heirloom herbs and edible flowers business growing for restaurants. And that's how we did a very small graduate student stipend. And that's how we kind of paid for everything. A few days earlier from the story I'm about to tell you, a lady was at the house to buy one of the baby goats, one of the kids. And I also had advertised for boxer puppies. And a guy was coming out to look at the puppies, and I kind of had a funny feeling about just the way he presented himself on the phone. So I asked the lady, would she stay while this guy came and looked at puppies, because I had a weird feeling. And she said, sure. So he was driving. Do you remember the Ford Broncos when they first came out? And they were like big, heavy vehicles, like big Humvees with like boxes on wheels. And we have a long driveway. It goes down a dirt lane. And when I say we were out in the boonies, we were out in the boonies. I mean, you could scream at the top of your lungs and people wouldn't necessarily hear you. So here he comes up the driveway, and the mufflers on his Bronco were so heavy and loud, the ground vibrated as he came up the hill. I mean, you could feel those mufflers, feel that vehicle, and the whole air shook. And the windows were tinted so that you couldn't really see in. And he pulls up beside me, rolled the window down this far, and he had a hat on and glasses. So all I really saw was his forehead and his cheeks. And he never took his eyes off of me. And he goes, "Are those the puppies?" And I said, "Yeah." And she got to look at him. And he goes, "No, I'll come back later. You're busy." And he backed up and he went back down the driveway. And as he was doing that, I said, "No, if you want to look at the puppies, look at them now. Don't come back without an appointment, right?" So he turned his truck around and he went down the driveway. And she looked at me and she goes, that was weird. I said, "Yeah, I had a bad feeling." So later that night, Charlie calls and he says, "I'm not coming home tonight. I've got to stay and work on my thesis. So you're on your own for dinner." And I said, "Okay." So here I am sitting there, probably about 9 o'clock at night. And I hear this heavy vehicle come up the lane. Now, the way the property is laid out is there's the trailer and probably, 100 feet to the dirt lane, which was kind of down off a bank. And then on the other side of the trailer was the driveway. So this heavy vehicle, again, the ground was vibrating, the air was vibrating, went up the lane really slowly. They didn't have lights on. And I kind of was watching out the window thinking, that sounds like that big truck from earlier. Because when you live on a dead-ended lane and everyone's on 5 acres of land, you know your neighbors' vehicles, what they sound like and what they look like, right? So it stopped. The vehicle stopped just past our property line. And I shut the lights off. Now, this trailer was so old that the doors didn't lock. There was no way to lock the doors. And even if they did, the rickety windows you could have pushed through. So Xander says, "Not the brightest guy having a loud car if he's trying to sneak up on someone." And this is true. So I turned the lights off. And I can remember it was a full moon. And it was a very bright, cloudless night with the moon hanging overhead. And it was putting out enough light so that you could see the outlines of trees and shadows and things. It was pretty bright light. And we had a fence down the perimeter of the property with a gate right directly across from where I was sitting, where you could go out and get the mailbox was there. And my dogs started alerting, started barking, and they rushed the fence. And they would do this, and then they would go down a little further, like whoever it was walking and trying the fence. And they shook the gate. The dogs went crazy. They went down a little further and they shook the fence. And I'm thinking to myself, that's that guy. He's trying to get in here. I had closed the gate at the end of the driveway, so he couldn't get up the driveway. So I went in and I fished out my my shotgun, loaded it. I mean, I didn't load it because after the suicide attempt, Charlie hid the shells. So I had no idea where the shells were. I just had this pump shotgun. And I got on the phone and I dialed 911 and I said, "Hey, there's someone trying to get on my property." I told them what had happened earlier in the day. And I said, I think I'm in danger. Could you send somebody? And the sheriff's deputy, Alachua County Sheriff's Department, he says to me, "Oh, little lady, is this your first time being alone in the dark? Are you scared?" And I said, well, no, it's not my first time being alone, but yes, I am scared. Could you send somebody, please? Well, if it continues to be a problem, you just call back. So I hung up and I sat there, and about an hour went by and it happened again. The dogs went off. Whoever it was walking the fence line again. I had left the lights off in the trailer. And this time I heard him really rattling that gate. And I said to myself, he's coming in here. He's coming after you. And you got a choice. You can stay in the trailer and be a victim, or you can go out and confront him. Now, don't forget, I had this pump shotgun, but no shells. And I'd rather die fighting than sit there like a victim. I don't know about y'all. But I went out and I approached the gate, and I was probably 20 feet from the gate, and I could see the outline, his outline. He was kind of silhouetted. And I said, what the dogs don't get, sir, I will. Think twice. He took off. I swear to God, if you want to defend yourself, have a pump shotgun, because there's not anyone on the face of this planet that doesn't recognize that racking sound. And the sight of a woman in the moonlight with a shotgun and two boxers going crazy did the job. He took off running toward his truck. The dogs went under the gate, and just before I heard that heavy door in that truck slam, I heard him scream. Somebody bit him in the butt or somewhere. But he screamed, he got bit, and he got bit hard. And then a few seconds later, he went on down that lane, and I called the cops back and told them what had happened. And they laughed. They thought I was telling a story. Couple of days later, the sheriff's department shows up at my door, wanting to hear details of what had happened, because they had started finding bodies in Gainesville. Now, I don't know if you all remember this, but the Gainesville student murders. Does anyone remember the Gainesville student murders? When Danny Rawling killed, on different incidences, 5 University of Florida college students were slaughtered at different times, different apartments. But I was on the side of the county where all that happened. And I looked like the girls that were being killed. He was killing brunettes, and my hair was darker, So the sheriff's department decided that maybe there was something to this, and we'll go see Miss Lisa and see what she has to say about it. So that's that story. It was before I became a journalist. It involved a shotgun, moonlight, and 2 dogs. The sad caveat to this, and I tried calling Charlie, but his back was to his phone, and didn't ring. It just had a light that flashed, so he couldn't see that I was calling him. It was like I called him over and over and couldn't get him. Cops wouldn't come. 5 students murdered. I don't think this individual was in any way related to Danny Rawlings and the student murders, because his physique was not right. It was not the same as Rawling. But, ladies, just listen to that. The pump shotgun, I think, saved my life. That and the dogs. About a week later, someone poisoned my dog. And it was probably related to him. But thank God he didn't come back to do whatever he had in his mind. And that's that story. So what do y'all think of that? Hey, badass. So which story did you like? Adrian, I could tell Adrian's on the edge of her seat there. Talk to me. Adrian, what's the funny look for? I got lucky? Yeah. But I don't know, Suzanne, you know, if you have to choose between being a victim and fighting for your life, wouldn't you fight? Happy birthday, badass. 46, you're a baby. What about the sheriff, Adrian? Yeah. Yep. You afraid being by yourself in the dark, young lady? Is this your first time? Yeah, you'd absolutely fight, right? So go get your shotgun, even if you don't put shells in it. If you get a pump shotgun, then people react to that. People react to that. Yep. So I think Charlie got home at about 1 a.m. that night. And I think there was a long time before I let him leave me alone in that trailer. I went and slept on the floor of his office when he pulled late nights. 1991, isn't that right, Charlie?
Mm-hmm.
The back of my ears don't smell like milk. I don't get it. Yeah. So let's do one giveaway tonight. Y'all feel like a giveaway? Actually, I can do two, I think. But first thing I'd like to give away are seeds from my butterfly bush. Let me see if I can find a picture of what the butterfly bush looks like. We have these in the front yard. And I collected seed this year. We will have to look up whether they take a cold stratification. Does anyone know if butterfly bushes need stratification? 1991 was before I was alive. Thanks for rubbing it in, Eleanor. Let me see. Bear with me just a second, guys. Just give me a minute. Let's see. I'll be with you in just a second. Gotta remember how to do this. All right, let's see. StreamYard. Present. Slides or share screen, Charlie? Slides, right?
Mm-hmm.
From my computer. Desktop. File not found. What am I doing wrong? You know, StreamYard has changed the way it does things. Trying to show pictures of what I want to give you. Bear with me. Someone sing or something. Present. Share screen. Window. No. Aha. All right. Now I can't see you all, but you see the butterfly bush? That orange flower? Yeah, it's a little different, Suzanne. Used to be I could just click on the picture and it would load it. But you see the orange flowers? That's let's see if we can do it again. Try it again. Present. Used to be under slides. Desktop. And it tells me the folder's so empty. Won't let me do it, Suzanne. Anyway, so I'm going to give away some seeds for this orange butterfly bush. Yeah, I've got it. I have it open in another tab. I'm going to try it the way she said. Present, right, Adrian? Slides or share screen, Adrian? Yeah, you're thinking of the milkweed, David? All right, there's that. File not found. Ah, Charlie, I hate computers. I don't know how you work with these things all day.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get it. Not, and I'm on a mission, y'all. Nope, it's not going to let me. So we're back to just looking at the folder, okay? Now it won't even let me do that. Anyway, pretty orange butterfly bush. It's a low-growing perennial. So once you get it established, I mean, you plant the seeds and it'll take, I think, a couple of years before it flowers. But if you're interested in trying some seed, I've got a lot of seed. We'll have to look up whether it needs cold stratification, and if it does, because in nature it gets cold treatment over the winter here. All you do is you put it in some moist sand in a Ziploc bag and throw it into your refrigerator for a minimum of 3 months, and take it out and scatter it wherever you want them to come up. Now, you need to keep in mind it's got a pointed leaf, kind of a lance-like pointed leaf, and it'll look like a weed when it first starts growing. So you got to look for it, and if you see it, don't cut it or yank it. But after a couple of years, you get these beautiful orange blossoms that actually the monarchs come to, but the butterflies love it. So Buddleia or Asclepius? That is a good question, David. Let me look it up. Now it's not going to tell me. Anyway, it is beautiful once you get it established. All right. I'm going to give you, no, this is a native. This is a native, at least here to Georgia, David. You can't buy this in the store. You can't buy this in a store. So anyone who wants it, I'm going to give you a minute to type in weed. Hashtag weed. Hashtag weed. So if you Google, butterfly bush and look for or maybe butterfly bush orange, it'll show you. Weed, everyone wants weed. David, Xander, Adrian. Susan. I don't know why I have such a hard time spelling your name, Suzanne. I'm sorry. Okay, Eleanor. Weed. Everyone wants weed. Don't smoke this. Okay. Okay, there's 6 people in here, but only Only 5. All but one wants the seeds. The one's probably me. I got plenty. Okay, so we're going to click to spin. Can you see the reflection of my glasses? Eleanor won. Yay! Okay, Eleanor. The way this works is I'm going to put the banner up. Hold on. You see scrolling on the bottom of my screen, Eleanor, is my email address. If you'll shoot me an email, please, and tell me what you won and give me your mailing address and whatever name you want me to write on the envelope, I will send you some of this seed. And I'm thinking you're going to need to cold stratify it probably to get it to come up. Okay, for drawing number 2, I'm going to give you some mullein seed. And just to remind you what that looks like. This is mullein. It's a very powerful medicinal herb. The leaves, it's a biennial, so it'll only live a couple of years. But the first year you get a rosette of leaves that you can either use fresh or dried. And I like to cut them and dry them. And they keep their potency for a couple of years. So if you harvest that first year, you probably won't need any leaves the next year unless you've had a really sickly winter or have a large family that got sick. But if you get a lot of cough or you're spasming and you can't stop coughing, you just basically pour hot water over these, let it steep for maybe 7 or 8 minutes, and then drink it, and it literally will slow your coughing down. The mullein blossoms that you see, they're yellow, that grow up these spikes. Now this 6 or 7 feet tall, and you pick those blossoms and you soak them in olive oil for a few weeks, and then you can strain them out. And that's an antibiotic antiseptic, commonly used for earaches, but it can also be used for gum infections or canker sores and that type of thing. If you mix it into a salve, it's good on your skin. So I have the mullein seeds I need to go collect. They're all falling out in the grass, which means I'll have a lot of mullein next year. And again, this is going to take a cold stratification. If you know that technique, alrighty. Back to comments. So the first season, as Indiana Backyard Gardeners is telling us, the first season you get the greens, the second season it shoots up the bloom spike, and then it'll put seeds all over the yard and you'll have them popping up. It likes really poor soil. It'll grow in a drought. It's very forgiving plant. Or winter sowing directly in the yard works. That's right. Yes. Yeah, and Suzanne points out it depends on growing conditions. It can be 6 feet this year, and next year it'll only go to 4 feet. You know, it's just good for your place, Xander. Yes. Okay, so we are going to try this again. And thank you all for your patience. Okay, Eleanor, there you go. Oh, I didn't mean to remove you, Eleanor. And it didn't come up on the screen, did it? Did it come up briefly? I hate technology. Oh, there we are. All right. If you want a chance at the mullein seeds, let's do #cough if you want mullein seed. #cough. #cough to get on the wheel. Look at all this coughing going on. We all need mullein. Just 3 of you? Just 3 people? David, okay. You're already there, David. Cough, 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 cough. That's it? Round and round we go. David got it. David got it. Again, David, shoot me an email and remind me that you won seed. And I'll probably get those out next Monday. Tomorrow's going to be spent. Y'all, I actually hired a maid. She doesn't know what she's getting into. She's coming tomorrow. She's supposed to be doing a deep clean on the 2 bathrooms in the kitchen. And she says, oh, it'll take me a couple hours. And I said, you haven't seen my house. Oh, and I tell you what, Adrian, let's see what else we have. I'm going to take a note. Suzanne, you said that you already have mullein, so we need David. And Eleanor, did we lose Eleanor? Eleanor, you want some mullein too? So Suzanne said she doesn't want it because she's already got it. And since you all are my loyal participants here, I'll just send. Eleanor gets the butterfly bush, and I'll send the 3 of you some mullein. Suzanne, do you want? Would you like some of the butterfly? You want to try doing that? I love goldenrod. The bees love goldenrod. So if you've been looking at the book I sent you, Suzanne, does it look like it's going to do its job for you? Yeah, we have goldenrod all over the yard. I ordered goldenrod a couple of years ago. Actually, a couple of different kinds of goldenrod. One was an anise goldenrod that, when you bruised it, smelled very licoricey. And of course, once you have it and it blooms, it goes everywhere. And what's really funny is one of our neighbors says, "Oh, I'm allergic to that. You're making my allergies worse." You know, the only way you get an allergic reaction to goldenrod is if you rub it on your skin or you make tea or you do something like that and you happen to be allergic to it, because the pollen is not airborne. Most people who get fall allergies and blame it on poor goldenrod are actually reacting to ragweed, which looks a lot like goldenrod and blooms at the same time, but it's the ragweed that puts its pollen up into the air and makes you sick. Yeah, see, Adrian knew that. Did find something I plan to try in that book. Thanks. Good. So is it a book worth having? Y'all, Suzanne, I sent her a book on the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. No, poor goldenrod, Eleanor, gets blamed for a lot of things. But it's ragweed that causes the allergic reaction, not the goldenrod. All right, another sad announcement. I got rid of 2/3 of my birds, my chickens and ducks. Because one of the things I learned when Charlie had his heart attack 3 weeks ago, it's just how much I can't do on my own, and taking care of the chickens was one of it. And I don't need 50 eggs a week anyway, so I've got just a handful of birds left. Yeah. So that was sad. I haven't worked in the greenhouse at all. I haven't harvested any of my peppers. It's been a rotten year. I hope y'all's year has been better than ours has been. Didn't start a fall garden. Very uncharacteristic for us. I've just been making jewelry and trying to get my strength back. So, but other than that, I want to thank everybody for spending time with me tonight. I know your time is worth an awful lot, and it touches my heart that you come see me. And so those of you, I think I've got everyone's address, but just to make sure, I'm senile, so shoot me your address in an email. And I guess, let's see, this is the third Thursday, which is our second broadcast for the month. So our next broadcast will be November 7th, and Brampton Gardner is going to come be our guest, unless she forgets. Because, Gail from Gail Southern Living forgot last week. She fell asleep and forgot. So hopefully Brampton Gardner will be here. And Eleanor, I'd sure love to have you the first Thursday in December, if you think about it. Give my land a rest. We are having not only the maid, and I said to the maid who's showing up tomorrow, I said, I hope you don't take one step in the house and run away screaming, because I really need some help. But we're also having someone show up to do an exclusion for roof rats. We've got rats coming in the walls, so we hired someone to come put some steel mesh between the gutters and the roof line. So we've got and then Saturday we've got a festival, and Sunday I work. So I'll try to get some content up next week. And, I haven't even been making a lot of content. I've just been bummed out. And the whole election thing has me bummed out. I don't feel like we have a choice between evil and evil. One's more eviler than others. If that's even a word, eviler. Oh, we could always elect Brucey the garden cat who's drinking my water. So until next time, remember, life is short and you can leave suddenly. So always tell the people you love that you love them every chance you get. And until next time,
Hey,
be healthy. Don't be good. Good is boring, but
no.
we'll see ya. Bruce the garden cat is a write-in candidate, yes.